I want to share something here. It's a statement from one of the great teachers in my life, Carl Jung. And I was trained in sort of Jungian therapy and Jungian analysis and so on. And he wrote something called Stages of Life. It says, thoroughly unprepared, we take the step into the afternoon of life. Worse still, we take this step with the false presupposition that our truths and ideas will serve us as hitherto. But we cannot live the afternoon of our life according to the program of life's morning. For what was great in the morning will be little at evening, and what in the morning was true will at evening have become a lie. Now, these words really resonated with me from Carl Jung's The Stages of Life. And if I could reword that, basically what he is saying is that as we move into the meaning phase of our life, the afternoon of our life, we are taking the ideas and the constructs and the rules and the guidelines and the provisions that we learned in the morning of our life, which is focused exclusively on ambition and getting ahead and getting more and being better than everybody else. We take those same kind of constructs into the afternoon of our life when meaning is far superior to ambition. But as he says in here, we end up living a lie. And the lie is because what was true for us in the morning, which is I have to get ahead, I have to win, I have to be the most successful and so on, in the afternoon have become a lie. But we don't know how to move into the meaning phase of our life. And the meaning phase of our life is the time when we shift back to the time in our life when we were in our mother's womb in those first 9 months. That's the meaning phase where we have surrendered, where we have, as Lao Tzu said, you're doing nothing, you're just being done, you know? And we can find our meaning by trusting in our nature, by recognizing that I am here to do more than just accumulate and be better than somebody else. In fact, it has absolutely nothing to do with it. One of my great teachers early in my life was Abraham Maslow, and I remember him saying very specifically that if you want to become self-actualized, if you want to live a life of meaning, the first thing you have to do is become independent of the good opinion of other people. The first thing you have to do. And the second thing is to become detached from the outcome. Those were the top two criteria for highly functioning people. Independent of the good opinion of other people, which is exactly the opposite of what we learned in the ambition phase of our life. And detachment from outcome, which is the other opposite. You know, instead of, it's like, we don't go out there to try to make, you know, to do something to make a lot of money. That's, you know, detachment from outcome is like you don't do it because of how much money you're going to make. You do it because there's something inside of you here that is telling you this is what you're here for. This is what you have to create. This is what your purpose is. You're going to make the world a better place. You're going to fulfill a destiny, a dharma that you signed up for, you know, before you even entered your mother's womb. I mean, that's the kind of thing that you begin to feel inside of yourself, so that you're moving into that stage. But you want to move into what Jung calls the afternoon of your life. You want to move into that armed with a whole collection of practices and beliefs and guidelines that work for you rather than work against you. So that you're not trying to feel fulfilled and meaningful and purposeful in your life by setting goals, by trying to get ahead of the other guy, by trying to win, by worrying about how much money you're going to make, by worrying about whether it's going to be liked, by whether other people like it. And that just goes back to, you know, the ego says it's all about your reputation. So learn to get a good reputation, learn to get people to like you. It's why people have such a problem with politics and political people, because they're consistently out there just trying to, whatever group they're talking to get them to agree with them, and then they say something different, and there's no meaning and power in them. I always like to tell the story. I've told it many times. When I was in the Navy, I was 19 years old, and I was at Alameda, California, and I was assigned to the USS Ranger, which is an aircraft carrier. At that time, it was the largest ship in the world. It's now decommissioned, but it was CVA-61. And I was in Alameda, and I boarded a small refrigerator ship in Alameda, which was to take me to Japan, where my ship was. And we took 29 days to cross. We got to Sasebo, and then from Sasebo I took a train up to Yokosuka. And as I was getting on that boat for that 29-day voyage across the ocean, my Uncle Bill, who was a school teacher in Hayward, California, handed me a collection of writing by Leo Tolstoy. And the collection of writings was called The Death of Ivan Ilyich. And that was the lead story. It's about 170 pages or so. It's a pretty good, it's like a small novella. And he said, before you get to Sasebo, before you get to Japan, he said, see if you can read The Death of Ivan Ilyich. Just read it. He said, it'll be really important for you. And he taught history and he taught English and things like that, so he used this in his teaching. So I was out 8 or 9 days, and I was just a young kid, teenager, and finally I picked it up and I started to read it. And it's the story of a judge in Moscow. Now, Leo Tolstoy was like one of the real great spiritual teachers. A lot of people don't realize. They think he was just a great writer, but he was way, way more than that. Many say he was a divine spiritual avatar, a master. He was the most famous man alive on the planet in 1904 and 1905, before television, before radio, and just considered a seer, a great avatar, a great teacher, a visionary. And he had this man who was a judge named Ivan Ilyich, and he would go back and forth to work every day. And he was doing everything that he was programmed to do the morning of his life. You know, he was programmed on ambition, on achieving things, on accumulating things. And he hated everything about what he was doing throughout the story. He not only hated what he was doing, but he hated his wife, because she's the one that got him into this in the first place. And he felt she was responsible for him not fulfilling a different destiny altogether. And you know that the ending of the story by the title of the story, The Death of Ivan Ilyich. You know this guy, he's going to die in the end. So the last paragraph of the short story, he's lying there holding his wife's hand, and he looks up into her eyes. And the last message of that story is, he says to her, what if my whole life has been wrong? And then he died and closed his eyes. And I was 19 years old, and I took out a little notebook and I wrote a note to myself. It said, Dear Wayne, don't die with your music still in you. Don't die with your music still in you. And I carried that with me, and in fact it became a part of another book that I wrote many years later called 10 Secrets for Success and Inner Peace, that I wrote for my children, my teenage children, so they would have an idea of the most important ideas. And this idea of not dying with your music still in you, and realizing that you can be, he was successful by every standard. He was a judge, he was well respected, yes, yes sir, no sir, yeah, your honor, all of that kind of thing. And yet, his question as he died was, what if my whole life has been wrong? And that question gives me chills even today, even as I say that, because I would never look into anybody's eyes and my last words would never be that, because my life hasn't been wrong, because I managed to make the shift. With that moment, that one moment that I just described, well, I've had that same kind of moment, that vivid, surprising, benevolent, and enduring kinds of thing. I had the very same thing when I left a position as a safe place, as a tenured professor with a guaranteed job and a certain amount of income and benefits and everything that goes with working for somebody else. And I had a similar experience, and I just was able to just walk away from it and take the risk to do so. Quantum moments show up in different ways for virtually everyone. But what they usually signify, especially what I just described, that very vivid, surprising, kindly, benevolent, long-lasting kind of thing that takes place, is where a person is getting themselves, in the Tao they would call it returning back to the Tao, returning to the place from which you came while you're here, living heaven on earth within yourself, you know. In fact, Leo Tolstoy wrote a book called The Kingdom of Heaven is Within, about that, just that concept, about having it within you. And I don't know if it's so much a letting go as it is a reconnection to what I call the field of intention, or the power of intention. I mean, intention, the book, The Power of Intention, is really not about the ego saying, I intend to make something happen, and that's therefore I'm going to do it. It has nothing to do with that. It's the opposite of that. The field of intention is really a field from which all things are intended. And all you have to do is reconnect yourself to that field, that creative field that intends everything into the world of the 10,000 things, into the world of the material world, and get yourself in harmony with that. And that's what I think happens in the meaning phase of our life, is that we reconnect to our source of being. It's a you know, Castaneda spoke about the that there's a link between you and this field of intention, but for almost everybody it's a rusty link. It's just you know, it's not clean. It's just every once in a while we realize, oh my God, there is something bigger, there is something happening here. Oh wow, look at that. Oh, I met that person, and that, you know, and the right thing showed up, and I have a synchronistic, you know, Carl Jung invented that term, synchronicity. I have like just sort of a collaboration with fate, it feels like, as if just, you know, everything just is working right and the right people are showing up and all of that. That stuff begins to really foment in your life, and you begin to see it taking place all over when you let go of the ego. Because the ego, according to, you know, most of the spiritual teachers, you know, including Patanjali, is just called, it's the false self. This idea that you are what you have and what you do and what other people think of you, and that you're separate from everybody else and separate from God, that's just false. You know, it's like, so you're living under, and that's why the Jung quote where he says that what was true in the morning will have at evening have become a lie, and you're literally living a lie, trying to fulfill a destiny that has been imposed upon you by all of these, you know, by society and by the right people and so on. But in here there's music that you came here to play, and you know you came here to play that music. Intention, the field of intention, is asking you to play that music and to take the risks and to do whatever it is that is required of you. And I'll be there to guide you and make it easy for you. It's not going to be a struggle. It's not going to be that difficult. You just convinced yourself that this is going to, that's what my next book is about looking at the thought systems that we have that keep us from changing long habituated thinking patterns. You know, why is a person overweight almost all of their life? It isn't because they were destined to be fat. They're thinking, you know, in a different way. And they're, you know, the same with addictions. Or why do you keep attracting the same kind of people into your life? The wrong people for you, or whatever it might be. This is just all long habituated thought systems that if we challenge them and begin to see that they're not even true, they're all lies. So it's like we live in a world in which all things are possible, in which there's no accidents, there can be no accidents, there's an organizing intelligence that supports everything in this universe, and we live as if who we are is this little microscopic separate thing who's always got to do things a certain way and fit in a certain way, and none of that is true. This is called the moment that turns your values upside down. And this is from an article about quantum changes. Men and women rank their most highly valued personal characteristics before and after a quantum change. So they did this long-term study, studying people from over 15, 20-year period. All right. This is like, men were asked this question, you know, to rank your most highly valued personal characteristics. Okay, this is before a quantum, this is while they're in the morning of their life. All right, so this is like ambition time. This is what men said were the five, there's about 15 of them here, but I'm just going to give 5. The first thing, the highest thing on a man's list before one of these quantum moments in the morning of his life was wealth, accumulation of wealth, making money. Okay. Second was a sense of adventure. Third was a sense of achievement, being able to achieve, which is one of those things about the ego. The fourth was my personal pleasure, just pursuing pleasure, getting drunk, getting laid, getting all of that. And finally, to be respected. This was like, be respected by what other people think of me. So there's the top 5 qualities. Now, after one of these changes that I just described, the one that sent me, just away from alcohol for the rest of my life. After one of these experiences, and they talk a lot about what these experiences are like, the first quality was spirituality. It went from, which wasn't even on the list of the top 15 before that. So it's like my relationship to God, my relationship to, the highest place, which I could say for me is truly the most important thing going on in my life today. When I do my own radio show and people call in from all over the world, it's always, make your relationship not so much to God as an external, but to the highest part of yourself, to the part of you that allowed yourself to show up here in the first place. And if you would have just left it alone, it all would have been just fine. So spirituality was first. Second was personal peace for men, to feel a sense of peace, because they're always anxious and worried and depressed and so on. That wasn't even on the list before. The third was family, taking care of my family, providing for my family. The fourth was God's will. And the fifth was honesty, which again wasn't even on, those weren't even listed before. All right. So you can see like a real shift now has taken place. Quantum experience, morning of the life, you've been trained by the ego, all of the things that you have to do, accumulate, defeat, win, be better than, achieve, and have a great reputation and so on. To the most important thing in my life is my relationship to my spirit. And I can tell you that when I sat down to write, you'll see it when you believe it, which was the shift for me. I have moved away now from psychology and all of that. It was so freeing to write that. And I go back and read some of the stuff that I wrote over 20 years ago now, when I was moving into this part of my life. And I'm so excited and happy and proud of it. I'm happy with what I did in that more ambitious time in my life as well. I think Erroneous Zones is like one of the classic books out there, but it's like a scratching of the surface of what a person can become, in my opinion. So, but imagine making the shift, making such a shift so that 20 years later, when the same men were asked the question after they had gone through this, they had a total different set of values and were running their life on the basis of that. And the irony of that, because I can give my own life as an example, is that all of the stuff that I wanted and chased after and demanded and needed, and all of that comes into my life in bigger and bigger and larger amounts.
So all the things that on number one, on the first list,
yeah,
wealth and adventure, right, and all that.
All of that is there in spades.
Going after it.
But the thing of it is, you're no longer attached to it.
Yeah.
See, there's just you've let go. Meaning doesn't mean that you don't enjoy all of the ambitious things that you had. I enjoy the wonderful places where I live and the adventure I have. I travel all over the world. I touch people's lives in a million ways. I'm writing books. I've got endless numbers of friends. I have great family. All of that kind of stuff.
Stuff that could have been what you were after.
Because I was attached to that. You see. And it's the attachment, it's the letting go of the attachment, and then you just let it flow. That's what the Tao teaches. It's just like everything just flows. But for women, now before, women being asked the question before a quantum moment, what is the most important thing in your life? In the morning of a person's life, a woman's life, her number one thing is family, fitting in, taking care, being a good daughter, being a good mother, being all of that. Again, nothing in this world wrong with it. But when you have one of those quantum moments, it's just not enough. It's like there's more that I know that I'm here to do, that I'm here for, whatever. And that, whatever that is, can vary in every single person that's out there. The second was the sense of independence, feeling independent as a person. That was their highly valued personal care. The third was a career. getting a career position. Fourth was fitting in, and fifth was attractiveness, being attractive. Okay, so those were the 5 qualities in the morning of a woman's life. After one of these quantum moments, and there are many of these for women that I described earlier. The first is my own personal growth as a person. That's the number one quality now, 15, 18 years later. Personal growth, growing as a human being. It's like rather than just staying stunted in some role that had been defined for me. The next was self-esteem, feeling positive about myself. That wasn't even on in the first 15 before that. The third was a sense of spirituality, closeness to God. The fourth was happiness, my own happiness, and fifth was generosity. So a major shift now takes place in a person's life after one of these quantum moments. Do you have to have that dramatic quantum moment in order to make that shift? No. I mean, that can be a very mild thing for some people. Some people, it's just an overwhelming feeling. These quantum shifts can take, like many, 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 many different forms. I've asked people in audiences to come forward and give me examples of quantum moments, in your life. And they range. I mean, they range from, I just had an insight, it happened to me in a dream. I awoke from a dream and it was just so real and so clear that this was it was a synchronistic event. I mean, I was thinking about this and all that, and somebody came on television and they started talking about it, and I exactly knew. Another one, I get it on my radio show all the time. They'll hear me talking to somebody on my radio show about this, and just listening to another person, hearing another person's story and all of that, it triggers that kind of a thing. But generally the transition is preceded by an awareness that I think everyone has. If you're really skillful at asking people about themselves, you can get it out of them that they know. They know that there's more to their life. They know that there is. I bet if I ask you about filmmaking and so on, you could probably go to something inside of you that maybe you were doing something else, delivering newspapers, who knows what the hell you were doing. And all of a sudden, it's like it began to hit. Maybe a film that you saw, maybe, something, whatever. And that's it. You're hooked and you're moving in that direction, and meaning now becomes like the dynamic or drawing force in your life. So your ambition now becomes to fulfill your dharma, to fulfill your destiny. That becomes, and it's like, for me, I know that if I were taken this afternoon, I have a pretty, I would have a pretty good resume, and a lot of credits and all of that, 30-some books and all of that. But there's a part of me that knows that there's more coming. There's something, and so it's like, have I lost ambition? No, I haven't lost ambition. I've lost attachment to the ego identification of what ambition is. I've lost that completely. So you don't get lazy. In fact, you get more active. You get busier, than your resume gets bigger. Your list of accomplishments grows and grows and grows, but you're not attached to it any longer. There's no hanging on to it. There's no need for it. It's not. So you're living in process rather than outcome. Outcome is when you're doing what you're doing so that you'll get the accolades or the money or the rewards of some kind or the Emmy or whatever it is. You get that. Whereas the great actors, they're not thinking about getting an Academy Award while they're doing the acting any more than Michael Jordan is thinking about getting above the rim when he's out there playing. He's just in the moment, and perfected the business of being in the moment, and not attached to any of the stuff. And then when you ask him how he does what he does, he says, "I haven't got an idea. I have no idea," which is. When people ask me, how do I get in front of an audience and speak to an audience and keep them entertained and live, I don't know how to teach that. I can't teach that, any more than you can teach filmmaking. A lot of people want to know about making the complete shift into meaning. A lot of it is about attachment and detaching yourself from the things that you used to think you absolutely had to have. And that the more you detach yourself, there's an old story told of two kittens, or a kitten and an old cat in the alley. Have you heard that story? And the kitten is in the alley, and he's chasing his tail, like you see kittens do, chasing and chasing and chasing and chasing. And the old cat looks at him and says, what are you doing? And he said, well, I'm chasing after my tail. He said, but why would you do that? He said, well, I just returned from cat philosophy school, and in cat philosophy school we learned that there are two things that are important for a cat. One is that happiness is the most important thing for a cat. And two, that happiness is located in my tail. So what I've discovered and decided to do is that I'm going to chase after it. Once I get a hold of it and get a grip on it, I'll have a lock on eternal happiness. And the old alley cat looks at him and says, you know, I really haven't had a chance to go to philosophy school like you did. I've lived in the alleys most of my life. He said, but it's amazing. I've discovered those same truths for me, that happiness is the most important thing in the world for a cat. And I've noticed that it is located in my tail. He said, the only difference, I think, between you and I is that I've noticed that when I do go about my business and do the things that are really important to me, it follows after me wherever I go. It chases after you wherever you go. And that's really a very hard message for those of us who grew up in the ego-dominated, I have to get more, I have to get ahead of other people, I evaluate myself on the basis of my achievements and so on, to believe that something could chase after you. You know, and so the issue becomes, and I think this is a really significant part of this of moving into meaning in your life, is when is it most likely that one of these quantum shifts is going to take place? When are you going to get this otherworldly message, or when are you going to get the wake-up call, the internal wake-up call, however it manifests? How's that going to show up? And I discovered it years and years ago, well, not that many years ago, 7 years ago. And I had taken a group of people to Assisi in Italy, which is the home of St. Francis of Assisi, the man for whom the city of San Francisco was named, the little man who lived back in the 13th century, who died at the age of 45 and was the first person to have the stigmata, the wounds of Christ. And he had to have his hands and his feet bound every night for the last 2 years of his life. And I wrote an entire book based upon this famous prayer of St. Francis, which is, where there is injury, let me bring pardon, where there is doubt, faith, where there is despair, hope, where there is darkness, light, where there is sadness, joy. In other words, wherever there is anything that is low, operating at a lower level, let me bring a higher energy to it. And he said that in his prayer, asking for peace. He didn't ask God, please bring me peace. I don't have any peace. Bring me peace. Hand me peace. He said, make me an instrument of thy peace. In other words, let me become what you are, thinking like God, which is what this whole business of meaning really is about, thinking like God. However, and that was Einstein's famous observation. They asked him about quantum physics. He said, they're all just details. He said, all I want to learn is to think like God thinks. Which is an interesting thing. Well, how does this source, this all creative energy, how does it work? How does it think? What is it offering? And so I was in Assisi, and I took a group of people there, maybe 30 or 40 people, on a sort of a tour of spiritual places in Europe. We went to Rome, we went to Lourdes, and then ultimately we ended up going to Assisi. And something very magical happened on that trip. I was writing this book, Spiritual Solution to Every Problem. The night before, I had lectured about St. Francis. I was reading Nikos Kazantzakis' novel about the life of St. Francis. I was very, very heavily involved in this, particularly in this prayer, and what it means, like, as a technology, because I always said the prayer is not really a prayer, it's just a technology. In other words, if you could just see things in terms of energy, and if you could see lower energy as hatred, as anger, as bitterness, as fear, as worry, as anxiety, and you could see higher energy as love and kindness and serving and peace and joy and so on, if you could just see, and all he's saying is that when you bring, like in a dark room, when you're in a dark room, and you want to bring light to the room, you don't have to warn the darkness or anything, you just bring higher energy, you bring light to the presence of darkness, and not only do you get rid of the darkness, but you convert darkness into light. You literally become a conversion. So high energy in the face of low energy all throughout, physics and quantum physics and so on. Higher energy in the face of lower energy brings higher energy up. Lower energy in the face of higher energy can never bring higher energy down. So they said of the great spiritual masters, like of Jesus, that when he would go into a village, just his presence in the village would elevate the consciousness of everybody in the village. When a Mother Teresa walked into the room, everybody felt her presence because she was operating at and living at a much, much higher, more peaceful, more beautiful, more God-realized, if you were, Tao-centered existence or Tao-centered life. And when people are like that, when you meet a person who's operating at these really high energy places because they are associated with, or aligned with, I should say, with God consciousness, you feel different when you're in the room with them than you do with somebody who's got very low energy, who's very angry, who's full of revenge, who can't have forgiveness and so on. You become a person who impacts people in a negative kind of way. So before I went to Assisi, I had taken I had a problem with this right knee, and I had been to several doctors, several orthopedic people, and my wife kept telling me having a look at it because I had to wear a brace everywhere I went, and they did MRIs on it, and they told me I would have to have this knee replaced. Ultimately, that it was getting to be bone on bone, and years and years and years of running, almost 30 years of running and tennis playing and tournaments and so on, had just taken its toll, and that I would have a knee replacement. But I just didn't like the idea of them putting me under and then snapping my leg in half and putting something there in the middle, and I didn't think too much more about it, but I wasn't keen on that. So I went to Assisi, and I was writing over there and lecturing, and we went to a place in San Damiano, which is about 18 kilometers from Assisi, and it's a place where Sister Clare, Mary Clare, who was the first woman to be a part of the Franciscans. She was a young woman who was enamored of all the ideas of St. Francis and wanted to go out and teach the world about peace and about love and about kindness and all of those kind of things. So we were going to visit the place where she died, which was on the 3rd floor of this castle. So we started to walk up this castle, and it's an old castle. It was built like in the 7th century. So it's old cement, concrete, and it had a circular stair. There were no elevators or anything like that. And it had a circular staircase that would wind its way up so you could get up to the 3rd level. And that was the bedroom where St. Clare, this beautiful young soul, did all of her praying and work and so on. And on that trip with me was a young man. His name was John, and he had cerebral palsy, and he wore a brace on both of his legs. He was about 6'2", and the braces each weighed 25 pounds, one on the right leg, one on the left leg. And we started to walk up the stairs to go up there, and he could take his leg and he could lift it out like this, and then he could take the other leg and he could lift it up like this, and he'd go up the stairs one at a time. But he had to be able to reach his leg way out to do this. Well, as we were going up the staircase, it narrowed and got narrower and narrower and narrower to a point where all you could fit in there was your body as you were going up. And he couldn't move his leg to the right, he couldn't move his leg to the left, he couldn't go back down the stairs. Obviously, if you try to imagine what it would be like to have braces and go downstairs, it doesn't work that way, And he said to me, he said, Wayne, he said, I can't go any further, I can't move my legs, and I can't go back down. What are we going to do? And without thinking, without anything, I just said to him, John, just strap your arms around my neck, and I will carry, and I'll carry you up the rest of these stairs. It was 3 flights of stairs. We had only gone, maybe a flight and a half or something. So we started going, and after about 7 or 8 steps with him on my back, and I was 60 years old at the time, my leg started to collapse, this right knee. And I hadn't put any weight on that at all. I had never gone anywhere without a brace if I was running or playing tennis or anything. I just didn't wear my brace that day. And all of a sudden, my leg just started to collapse with him on top of me. And I just had a whole vision of all of us. There was maybe 100 people all in line to get up to this place, and all of us sort of collapsing on top of each other, and the headlines in the Assisi Daily News, America's spiritual teacher found at the bottom of this heap of people, and so on. So and then I realized as I was out that I didn't have my brace on, and I thought, oh my God, what is going to happen? And in that split second, I had a vision of St. Francis, what he looked like, this little man who I had really studied his life in depth, and I was there in Assisi to do more studying and to walk in the same fields where he had walked and done his healing and so on. It was a very exciting time for me. I've been there many times. And in that second, when I was just about to collapse, he just put his hands up like this and said something, and I still to this day cannot remember what words it was, but you can walk, or you can stand, or it's okay, you're fine. And I stood up, and in that moment, I smelled roses again. I had this, like right in this staircase, it was just this floral essence, and as I was about to go down, instead of going down, I stood back up, and my leg was like totally, it was working again, and I had a rush of energy like I've never experienced ever in my life before. And it was like, I went like this, and all of a sudden I didn't walk anymore. I started running up this staircase with this 240 or so pound man with the braces on my back. And I ran up to all the way up 3 flights to the top, energized, almost like I was flying. I got up to the top. My wife was standing there, and all the other people said, "What happened to you? What? You're running with John on your back. How could you possibly be doing that? Everybody's out of breath and all of that." I said, "Something very bizarre happened down there." And I went over to the balcony, and I just put my hands together, and I just was giving thanks. And that picture was on the cover of There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem. Somebody snapped that picture. I didn't even realize there was a photographer. And all I was doing was just giving thanks, okay? So that's part one of the story. And that happened in 2000. So for 6 years or 7 years, I thought that the reason that happened, now my leg was totally healed. I've never worn a brace since. Every once in a while I get a little stiffness in it, but I can do yoga on it, I can run on it, I can swim on it, I can dance on it. I've never been back to have any surgery. It was a total, complete healing of a very, very serious injury that I had in that moment. And I thought to myself, and I started playing tennis again without braces. I started running, marathon, things like that. All of this on this knee that was supposed to be gone, bone on bone. So for 6 or 7 years, I thought, how could this happen? And why did it happen to me? And my conclusion was that it happened to me because I'm special. And that it was my ego. I mean, it was like I was over there, I was lecturing on St. Francis, I was communicating his ideas, I was writing a book about it. It was like natural that, this famous American guy is over there and St. Francis is going to appear to me because I'm so special, So, and I really thought that up until just a short time ago when I started working on my book on the Tao Te Ching, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. And it began to hit me. There's another collection of writings of Lao Tzu, and it's called the Hua Hu Ching, which means it's the unknown teachings of Lao Tzu. And this is one of the things that he says in verse 59 and 60. He says, if you wish to become a divine, immortal angel, then restore the angelic qualities of your being through virtue and service. This is the only way to gain the attention of the immortals who teach the methods of energy enhancement and integration that are necessary to reach the divine realm. The divine realm is the realm of meaning. When you are totally on purpose in your life and you're getting the guidance of the divine realm. These angelic teachers cannot be sought out, Lao Tzu says. You can't find them. You can't ask for them. It is they who will seek out the student. When you succeed in connecting your energy with the divine realm, that is, live at a God consciousness way as God lives, through high awareness and the practice of undiscriminating virtue, the transmission of the ultimate subtle truths will follow. And then he says in verse 60, the mystical techniques for achieving immortality are revealed only to those who have dissolved all ties to the gross worldly realm of duality, conflict, and dogma. As long as your shallow worldly ambitions exist, the door will not open. As long as your shallow worldly ambitions exist, the door will not open. So then I go back to this story that I'm telling you about Assisi and this magical miracle thing that I thought happened to me because I'm just a chosen one. I'm the chosen guy with the big ego, and like, of course St. Francis is going to pick me. Who else would he pick? All right? And so on. And I really thought that for the last 5 minutes, just not like I thought I'm deserving of something special, but I just associated, using the intellect, I just associated all of the things that I was doing with, of course, this is a natural unfolding, and I'm obviously above all of these other people who don't, so all of that was going on in my head, all right? And then it hit me when I read this, and when I wrote Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, that the way that you make the transition to open the door to the divine realm, which is the realm of purpose, it's the realm of meaning, it's the realm of living your dharma, fulfilling your destiny, what you signed up for, is by living the undiscriminating virtue that he's talking about. So what are the virtues? And what was I doing in that moment? Now, in the moment that John said, what are we going to do? I didn't think of myself at all. It never occurred to me, nothing else occurred to me other than, whatever it is that's going on in you, forget it, just help this guy out. You've got to help him out, and you're right next to him. You're the only one that can. And I forgot totally about myself. I let go of all of what might be involved with me, that I might hurt my leg, that's a long way to carry somebody who weighs more than I do, that it's, I didn't do any of that. I just immersed myself in total service to this person, which is what God realization is all about. I mean, the poet Hafiz has this wonderful line. He said, even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, you owe me. He said, just think what a love like that can do. It lights up the whole world. So it's like, so I was, in the moment that I lived the virtues, was really 100% living the virtue, I understood what is meant when, this idea that the laws of the material world do not apply in the presence of the God realized. The laws of the material world don't apply in the presence of God, in the presence of God realization, okay? So that when you're in the presence of someone like that, or someone who is acting that way, which is what I was doing in that moment without thinking about it, without anything, just giving myself in service to this person, that's when the laws of the material world no longer apply. And a magical kind of healing can take place that you could never explain. Doctors see these kind of things happen on a regular basis. And when I was reading this idea that the door won't open, you can ask and you can see. That was one of the big issues I had with The Secret, with the movie The Secret, which was really about just ask for stuff and align yourself with that kind of energy, and you have to attract it. I think I really think the real secret is that you have to, if you want to get to that higher place, you have to be asking, not what's in it for me and what can I have, but how can I offer to someone else that which I would like to have for myself, and not care about whether it shows up or not. And so the four virtues, according to Lao Tzu, are, and if you're living these, if you're, this is what I talk about in my talks over and over again. If you want to get to meaning in your life, if you want to get to that field of intention and be there, what does the field of intention do? What does God do? What does Source do? What does Source energy look like? It looks like serving. It looks like giving. It asks nothing back. It wants nothing back from anybody else. It doesn't restrict it to anyone. It doesn't judge. It just offers. It offers abundance. It offers its sunlight. It offers kindness. It offers joy. It's like it's constantly doing this all the time, and it's only our egos or our connection to our attachment to this realm that I love the way he describes that in number 60. That as long as your shallow worldly ambitions exist, the door will not open. So it's like you open doors by getting into virtue. When you look at the word Tao Te Ching, Tao means the way. T-E, Tao Te Ching, just means living the virtue. That's what it means. It's the virtue. And the virtues, according to Lao Tzu, are first reverence for life, which manifests, that's for all of life, which manifests as love and respect for yourself and others. So a reverence, practicing a reverence for life, for others. A natural sincerity, which manifests as honesty, simplicity, and faithfulness. Gentleness, which manifests as just kindness and consideration for others. And supportiveness, being supportive of others, which manifests itself in service. Each one of these things I was doing in that moment without thinking about it. And the laws of the material world suddenly stopped. So it's like what I've discovered is that when I get my attention off of what's in it for me, which is where I was throughout the whole ambition phase of my life. How much am I going to make? How well am I going to do? How are other people going to perceive me? Blah, blah, how much is my stuff going to be worth? And blah, 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 blah. When I got off of that and onto how can I took a whole year to just live the Tao Te Ching, an entire year, 12 months, every day, just living it and practicing and talking about it and meditating on it and so on. And I just kept getting more peaceful and easier. And more kept coming to me. Bigger and more and amounts and shinier and nicer and more money, more fame, more accolades, more all of that stuff, totally unattached to it. Like, don't even want to be bothered with it. It's just not it's not what I'm about. It's fun, watching it, and virtually everything that I make now I give away. Everything. No matter how much money I get paid, it's like I've already know that I don't really need anything else. My friend Byron Katie says that to believe that you need what you don't have is the definition of insanity. To believe that you need what you don't have. Because you're already here, so you've already proven that you don't need it. So to go around believing that I can't be happy, fulfilled, whatever it is, unless I get the stuff that I don't already have, it's a complete and total illusion. It's a thought that isn't even true. There's no truth to it whatsoever. You don't need anything. And when you get that, the irony is you're no longer attached. Your total life is just about living those virtues. How can I serve? How can I be sincere? How can I be gentle? How can I be supportive? And thinking like that. And that's how I think now. And because of that, I'm in meaning. And being in meaning, the times that I was in ambition, is delivering more and more and more and more of what I wanted so much then. And now that I'm not attached to it, it's like I can just be like the cat. I can just go about my business and just let it follow after me wherever I go. The mystical techniques for achieving immortality are revealed only to those who have dissolved all ties to the gross, worldly realm of duality, conflict, and dogma, which is what the material world really is. It's a world of duality. You can't get past the concept of duality. Everything is in opposites. It's male and female. It's yin and yang. It's right and wrong. It's up and down. It's north and south. It's good and bad. It's right and wrong. It's like everything in the physical world, the world of the 10,000 things, is the world of being. But in the Tao it says all being comes from non-being. And non-being has no duality in it. It has only oneness. So how do you take oneness out of oneness and create two-ness? God can't understand or grasp the concept of two-ness. The opening line of the Tao Te Ching says the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. And the reason it says that is because now you've got two. You've got the thing and you've got the name for it. And as long as you put a name on the thing, you got two things. There can't be two-ness out of oneness. So the Tao or God or spirit or meaning is like, in mathematics, it's like zero. It's like the number zero. You cut it in half, you still got zero. You cut it in half again, you can't divide that, that concept of zero, of oneness, okay? But the only thing we have to grasp all of this with is a mind that puts labels on things and uses symbols. So now it immediately goes to two-ness, and that's why meditation is so difficult for people who are raised up in the West and so on, because they're always thinking in terms of their symbols and what it's called, and then we fight wars over that and so on. So duality, it's almost an impossibility to grasp the concept of oneness while you're in two-ness, and you're in two-ness as long as you're in a body. And as long as you're using... So the only way that you can get it, one of the great paradoxes of the Tao says that you can only achieve fulfillment or meaning when you achieve emptiness. So it's like you have to figure out a way. I have what I call the four paradoxes of the Tao. One, you can only achieve fulfillment when you achieve emptiness. You got to get quiet. You can only hear the answers that you seek by silencing the mind. So you can only hear when you get quiet, because anything else that you hear is not God, it's duality. You can only become rich by knowing that you already have enough. And you can only reach paradise by recognizing that it's already within you. So what I say to people who really want to access the transition from ambition to meaning, if they really want to access it, is to get your thoughts off of yourself. I do it on the radio every Monday. I mean, it's like all my questions, all the questions are about, why can't I manifest this? Why can't I have that? This isn't working, and so on. And my response back to them all the time, over and over again, is take what it is that you would really like to attract into your life, whatever it is, whether it's wealth, a job, money, a nice watch, a new car, whatever it is, and want it more for somebody else than you want it for yourself. Just want it more. Just think about that and think about how much joy it would give you to be able to put your attention on that. And just keep your thoughts on that. Take your thoughts off of yourself and start living the four virtues. Start being sincere, start being supportive, start having this reverence for their life and so on. And just shift off of what's in it for me, and how much am I going to get, and why isn't it here fast enough, and why is theirs shinier than mine, and so on. Off of that, and begin to project that, and do that. That's what I did for a year when I wrote the Tao. I just would practice, because so many of the verses of the Tao are about that whole concept of offering, giving, letting go of your stuff. The more you have, the less you have. More is less, less is more. That's all out of the Tao. And letting go of that, and practicing that, and seeing that in strangers and people that I would meet and so on, and meditating on it and so on. And the more I did that, the more I shifted my focus to thinking like God thinks, or like in the power of intention, I call it the 7 faces of intention. It's like, if you had binoculars and you could just focus them on, what does this source that's always creating, what does it look like? Well, whatever it looks like in the physical sense, it is you can't say what it looks like because it doesn't have any vision or boundaries to it. But what it acts like is everything is available for everyone, and there's an unlimited amount of it. And it's just going to keep. I'm just going to keep giving it to you. I'm just going to keep getting, and you can do anything that you want with it. And it's like, and you are a part of it. You came from that, and you must be like what you came from. So you've got to look at yourself and see divinity. You've got to be able to look in the mirror and see. It's like, even hold your hands up and just look at your hands and say, these are the hands of God. These are hands that were created by God, so they must be like what they were created by. And this is what I have here in front of me. And what does God do with his hands? He gives to others. It's always about giving. So you can practice this. You can raise your kids on this kind of thing. And then you can look at any position, any person in this world. I don't care whether you're a school teacher. I don't care if you're a dental hygienist or if you're a carpenter or whatever it is out there that you are doing. If you can take your attention, if you want the door to open to meaning, then the only way that door is going to open is if you understand that you have to leave your attachment to this grossly world of the material things and what's in it for me and how much am I getting, and shift your energy, your thoughts onto how may I offer, how may I serve.